Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hypnotic Rambles, episode 3 of
Three.
My Name is John.
Hello. And I'm Moniko. Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
And
wherever
evening,
you
good
are.
evening, wherever in the world you are. Um,
And surprise, surprise, today John is in charge.
I have no responsibility for this as again, as
Yes, you
usual.
do.
No, I
Yes,
don't.
you do.
So today we wanted to talk about the power of emotions.
It's a big, big, big
Yeah,
concept, but
there may
one
be
that is
more
very
than
important.
there may be more than one in this, but we'll ramble and see where it goes.
Yay! Okay, I'll give it to you then. You lead as you're
Fair
in
enough.
charge.
Fair enough. So, as hypnotherapists, we deal a lot with emotion.
Mm,
But we live in a very logical world. In the world of love is logic, ABCs and one, two, threes. Unfortunately, when emotion kicks in, logic kind of doesn't always get a fair shout. So it's fairly important that we deal with emotions. Because as humans, we are emotional beings. And as hypnotherapists, I suppose we're in a very good position to deal and understand and help people deal with emotions. Um, and it's such a vast field because it affects every part of our lives, actually. Um,
absolutely.
Everything from the way we feel to the beliefs we hold about ourselves
Mm.
to even our health. So, understanding emotions, and I think more importantly, not being afraid of emotions. Because I don't know about you, but ultimately, emotions are a signal.
They are a message,
They're a message,
aren't
yeah.
they? They are a
Yeah.
message. I like to think about them like that.
Yeah.
And yes, guilty as charged. I don't like to feel negative emotions. However, I know that um, there is something behind it. So
Yeah.
if I feel a certain way, I like to investigate. Where is it? What's the reason for me to feel? Why am I triggered? But also, what I wanted to remind the audience, I think we have mentioned in the first episode that we have the logical mind and the emotional mind. And when there is a conflict, as you said, the emotional mind will win. So even though logically, consciously, we know we don't want that, um, if we feel differently emotionally, we will go for it. Or,
Absolutely.
or, or we don't want to like something, we will like it if there is an emotion that is driving us toward it, which I think is quite interesting.
Well, it's fascinating because it reaches across every topic of what we work with.
Mm,
Everything
yeah.
from people losing weight to people being afraid of heights or to any kind of fear or phobia to smoking to and a lot of stuff I work with, which is medical, which is where there's an overload of emotion, negative emotion in the body. Um, so it really is a case then of how people can not be afraid of it.
Mm.
Would that be fair? Is that one of the first things that people need to?
That it's okay to feel that way. It
Yeah,
is okay. Exactly what you're saying is, and also not to be afraid to feel it. I do know from experience that it's absolutely uncomfortable and can be very painful to feel it. But so the first step, I think, is to become aware that
yeah,
I feel a certain way, even if I can't name the feeling. It's just that, all right, I'm feeling this, acknowledging, and by that, I think that's where you stop it to grow even stronger because you're listening. So imagine emotions like children.
mm,
If a toddler goes, or even an older child goes to their parents and they say, "Mom, mom, mom, can you listen to me? Can you listen to me?" And the mom is just ignoring the child will be louder.
yes,
And if it's not if it's a toddler, a younger one, they may even pull the clothes or even shake the parent. Can you just listen to me? And they may even throw a tantrum. And that's exactly how you need to look at emotions, I think.
That's a
The
lovely.
more we ignore them, the more we try to push them down. Just be quiet, stay there for a moment, right? Stay still. The louder and stronger they become. But the second you turn to that child and you say, okay, I am here, I'm listening, sort of you calm them a little bit so that that strong tantrumish, whatever they are going through will be weakened. And
Yeah.
okay, I'm listened to. My mom or my dad or whoever that is, they are listening to me. And then they start to explain what it is. And that's exactly what the emotions are. They are just trying to tell us something. And then when we start listening to them and not pushing them down, I think that's when the whole releasing process starts. But that's just my experience and opinion, obviously.
Well, this is
Feel
both of our
free to.
opinions, really, isn't it? That's what we said from the word go. But this is just our opinions, and people may or may not agree. People may,
Absolutely.
people may learn, people may not. They may already know.
Yeah.
They may know more than we do. That's
Mm,
absolutely okay. But I happen to agree with you, and I happen to agree that as you listen to those emotions, you process, and
mm,
um, two things. One is there's a lesson in there for you if it's relevant. And the second is that you allow it to process once you listen to that message. But I often find that as you process that lesson was something that was relevant at a different time,
mm,
may not be relevant today. For most people, it's not.
mm.
It's something that
So
happened
true.
when you were younger, and it felt so big at the time. But when you look back at it today as an adult, you go, "That wasn't that big." But because it had been shut away and
Mm.
not listened to, for whatever reason, it may have been that the mind didn't want to deal with it. Maybe it was because some of those emotions are quite traumatic type stuff that are just
Yeah.
locked away. Others are not so traumatic, but they've just been locked away anyway. And you've just built fear upon fear upon fear upon it.
Exactly, because not everything is. So when we say trauma or traumatic, we don't straight away need to think about something massive.
Yeah,
In my experience and opinion, again, I say I call trauma every single event that was significant for that person,
right.
right, in that moment, with the resources that they had
Absolutely.
or they didn't.
Right.
Because when we can't process something, it's more likely that we didn't have the right, or the people who had the right resources, or we didn't have the right resources to overcome them. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but holding on to emotion or not processing emotion. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit because what you just said is, and this is just my opinion, but every event is neutral. It's the way we look at the world that determines how we feel about it. For
Yeah.
some people, one event would be nothing. For some of people, it's very happy. For some, it's quite traumatic. I tell a story to all my clients about because my friend is a Liverpool fan and I'm a United fan for my sins. And Liverpool won 7-0 last year, and he watched the game with me. We both saw the same thing, but we were both having two very different sets of emotions.
Yeah.
you know, so it's how we look at the world. It's our filters that
Yeah.
determine how we judge that emotion, how we make what the conclusion we reach is.
Mm.
So it's a case of, um, we are emotional beings. We've been emotional from the moment we were born. In fact, only having a conversation with somebody today about, our emotional system, which is kind of probably one of the first systems that's formed. If heart is the first organ that's formed in the fetus, fully.
Mm.
Um, and we have unconscious memory from, early childhood before we can speak, before our logical brain kicks in.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
emotions have to be acknowledged.
absolutely. And I think everybody and their emotions have to be acknowledged. And I
Absolutely.
think I think that's a very important point that you just mentioned there, that it's how we feel in any given moment. And it doesn't matter what other people are saying to us, that, or just get over it. You shouldn't feel that way. It doesn't matter. Because through my lenses, through how I process you and see the world, my perspective and beliefs and the whole system that I have, how does that thing make me feel? Again, nobody can and nothing can make me feel. What are the emotions that are created within me? And I think that's what's important. And I think a very, very important um, teaching here is, which we could actually start at a very early age, teaching children that it's okay for them to be angry for whatever they are angry for, but it's to teach them how to process that anger or whatever the feeling is. Because what we tend to, or where I am, when I was growing up, um, I wasn't allowed to feel the negative emotions because they were bad, and then it showed weakness, and it showed like, oh, it's embarrassing to feel however you feel. And that's very confusing, I think, for a person, for anyone, because then you don't learn to live with your emotions, because as you mentioned before, there is no bad or good feelings. So it's the meaning that we put to it.
Mhm. But even going back to what you said earlier about, if an emotion isn't listened to, it shouts and roars, it just gets stronger.
Mm,
And actually, then the further away you go from it, the bigger it actually seems.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard a very, very, I think, a really interesting analogy for anxiety. And I thought, what if we could use this for every single classified negative emotions, right? So this lady told me that, imagine anxiety like a mold on the wall.
Mm.
And if you don't clear everything of it, you don't listen to all of it, it will start to grow again, even if you just leave a teeny tiny. And I thought, oh, that is so powerful, because even if it's anger, if you just, okay, I'm going to push it down with something else, whether it's food or just willpower, but I don't actually work through it, or I don't listen to it, or I'm just going to the surface anger I'm going to, you know, work with, but not what's underneath, like the deep one.
Yes.
It will grow back because it hasn't been dealt with, it hasn't been listened to.
Absolutely.
And I think it's not just anxiety. I think it's all the feelings that we classify negative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we don't clear it, it just is going to be there, and it's also not going to be listened to, as you said, which
Mm,
it's going to start to become stronger again. And of
mm,
course, the further away we go from it, the bigger it appears.
mm.
And that's just the way it is. I mean, so and I'm just reminded of something. You try and tell someone who's having a really anxious attack of some kind to calm down. I mean, they're not listening to you from your logical brain.
No,
So it's no advice to give anybody. It's about finding a way to help someone in the moment when they're anxious, but then also to find a way to process that emotion. And I think we're lucky as hypnotherapists in that we already know how to do that.
yeah, yeah. I think the worst is when somebody's just get over it. You know, I've just been in a car accident. Just get over it. It's happened 2 years ago. Why are you still hung up on it? Uh, and that's where it comes. The next part of this is because it's in the body as well. So you have to listen to the emotion and then make sure that it's not stuck in the body, because that's where all the aches and pains and whatnot are coming, all these illnesses, diseases. And again, that's just my opinion and
Well,
my experience.
no, and from a practical perspective, as we store what we will classify as negative emotion for this
Yeah,
purpose, um, what we do is we have cortisol that flows through us from us then from our fight, flight, freeze mechanism when this thing kicks in. And that's the stress hormone. So
yeah,
stress wears down the body. So yeah. it has an effect on the body.
Absolutely.
Because the immune system has to fight, has to work to repair the stress first and foremost. So it doesn't actually allow the body to heal properly.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think a very like easy example of this is when we go through just like maybe a cold or something, and then we feel really under the weather. But then something, we watch a comedy or somebody makes a really, really funny joke or something, suddenly we forget that we are, you know, not well, and then we can actually feel so much better afterwards if it lasts. It's because we with laughing, but truly from the heart, some, or you know, like something, if we classify them happy, um, that is a sort of release as well. And then with that, the body is the immune system is or can focus on the healing because we
Yeah,
are not focusing on the other part. So yeah, that's
yeah, because I didn't realize we were going to get on this road, but we've just rambled down it. So you can drag me back if you
we
want.
never know where we end
You
up.
can drag me back if you want. But I remember the very first time I heard I came across epigenetics.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
for those who aren't familiar with it, I'm going to give you my understanding of it, which comes from Bruce Lipton, which is that um, basically, he took a stem cell. It doubles every couple of hours. After a week, he had, I don't know how many thousands, broke them into three different petri dishes, used three different cultures, and then one got bone tissue, one got muscle tissue, one got fat tissue, and they all came from the same cell. So genetics tells me they must all be the same. So how does this work? Now, why am I talking about this about emotions? But I'll get there, I promise.
yeah. I know you will.
So, he went, well, what's the difference? The difference is the culture. What's the culture in humans? It's blood. What's the biggest influence that affects our blood? And the chemists in our body. Where's the chemist in our body? It's our brain. Right. So when we produce oxytocin and serotonin, it's like a summer's day for ourselves. They just think it's a wonderful, happy place. When we produce cortisol, it's like a rainy winter's day. So it just wears down, and the immune system then has to work to repair that. Um, and for someone who works a lot with FND like me, that is one of the things that, by clearing trauma, negative emotion that the people have been holding on to, that's the first approach, and then working with the immune system to do the rest.
Mm.
But it's the power of emotions that affects the physical body as much as the quality of people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And lots of the times when people say they come to me for anxiety, or you know, they have a nervous breakdown and they come, and then they often complain about foggy brain.
Yeah,
And then the second we start to do the clearing, and which is the mental and emotional detox or decluttering, whatever you call it, they start to see, and you know, clearly, and it's like, oh my god, I can think clearly now. That fog just went. I said, yeah, because it's the overload of those emotions and feelings that that person is holding onto. Because I think we are all experts at pushing them down, keeping them there, holding on to them for years and years and years. But at some point, as we mentioned before, they will come up,
yes,
and they will shout really loudly, and it might be with a very strong pain in the body as well, or it's just with the foggy brain, and then that's it. You're not listening to me. I'm going to make you listen. If somebody is like really stressed at work, and they overwork themselves, it's usually that's when they come down with something, and it's the body's way of telling, I ask you to stop, slow down, but you're not listening. So I'm going to make you through, you know,
yeah,
through those emotions.
absolutely. And um, when you think about the effects, even just from that perspective, and we could delve into this all day, and we
Oh
really
yeah,
could. We could
we are going
spend,
to have to stop soon.
and we will, yeah, we could like have a complete 3 hour conversation about this and delve all the way down and more. But when you think about how particularly negative emotion can affect not just our mood, but our physical body, then it really is, I suppose, if you go back to what we talked about last week about personal responsibility and being
Mm.
responsible for our own emotions and our own responses, more to the point, um, then it is on us to take responsibility for dealing with those emotions. Because I think you said it last week, we're no longer children, we're adults now, so um, we have to take responsibility for
We
that,
have to.
So then
So
it's
true.
about how to why it is that people don't face up to emotions and how to explain to them, I suppose, the benefits of doing so.
Yeah, yeah. And I think why people don't face, I think there are many, many reasons, probably different for everyone. I was pushing them down because that's what I've been taught to do. That's what I've been conditioned to do. And then when I obviously moved away, I didn't know. I didn't know anything else, anyhow else how to do it. But then when I started on this path and started to research and learn about emotions, that's when I realized that it's okay to feel not okay. It is okay. And what's really, really important here is to validate ourselves and our feelings.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what my friends are thinking or what my family, because if that thing made me, or I felt in a way because whatever happened, it's okay. It's okay. And the second we acknowledge those emotions in ourselves as well, I think that's when we start to come out of it. And I think it's self-empowering as well. Um,
Very self-empowering too,
mm,
because you get to know yourself
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. What do I like? What do I don't like? Or what I want, what I don't want.
and you get to free yourself too.
Absolutely. So, what can we leave the audience with? What would be the most important a few things with this that would be very helpful for them to know?
Do you want to go first?
I can go. First is to accept, to acknowledge this is how I feel. So if somebody says something to me and I feel a certain way, I don't have to fight. I don't have to defend myself. I can just go inward whenever there is a free time, obviously. And I just say to myself, you know what, that sentence or that behavior or that action just made me feel this way, even though I know nobody can make me feel, but those are the emotions. And with that, we are acknowledging that actually this is how I feel. And with that, we are already stepping onto this releasing process. So for me, the acknowledgement is the most important of
Yeah,
all.
nothing
How about
starts with acknowledgement. For me, it is probably two things. One is that emotions that we're holding on to that are in some way limiting us,
you? Mhm.
when we free them, we take control of our lives, we take responsibility for our lives, but we also begin to create our lives in the way that we want to create them.
Yeah.
Um, and the other is that we're often afraid to deal with emotions because I'm just going to pick an age now, but let's say something happened when we were 10.
Mm.
As a 10-year-old, it was massive, it was huge, but we're no longer 10. There's a lot of distance between that. And when you look at it today as an adult, it's not as big as happened to that 10-year-old. So I'd often use the analogy of oftentimes people are looking at an emotion like it's a movie full on screen and you're not aware of anything else that's going on around you. It's absorbing all your attention.
Mm.
But actually, it really isn't that big anymore. And when you can look back at it as an adult today, that's not that big a movie. That you don't need to be afraid of it.
No, it's so much smaller, isn't it? And you can also take the learnings from it
That's it.
so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I use an analogy here with clients where I tell them put the mouse under the floorboard.
Oh yeah, yeah, I love that.
Told you that one. So it's basically, I live in the country. When I bought the house, nature had full control of it. Um, and had to bring pest control in, and that didn't work. So I had to get a cat, and that did work. And then last winter, I could hear all this scratching under the floor, and it sounded like the biggest amount of noise. I didn't know whether there was an army of them or the biggest fecker ever under the floor. Put a trap out, and the following morning, I came down, there was a tiny mouse that size. And it made me realize that in a tiny space, the noise just sounded so much bigger than it was.
Mm,
And our emotions are like that. We look at them in a tiny space of that 10-year-old. But when we look at them as an adult today, they really are only that size.
mm.
Do you know?
I love that.
So it's one way of kind of helping people to understand, because like you said, when you look at it, when you push it down and push it down and push it down and it screams louder and louder and louder, it seems bigger than it is,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Because it wants to be heard.
Yeah.
It needs attention. And once we give it, it starts to shrink. But then again, if it doesn't, there are numerous ways to help it along, to just give it a shove, just a little bit of push to
Absolutely.
release it. So if I were to ask you to give to the audience one way that they could use that could help them through this releasing process, so they acknowledge it, they accepting it, they look at it differently. But if they still feel something is still, lingering there, could you give them, and I will give mine as well, but could you give them one technique, maybe a tool that they don't really have to learn a lot about, but it's just a
To
natural
release
way?
to
Mm?
release an emotion. Well,
Mm?
one of the ways is just to feel it and to give yourself time to feel it.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to process it. It can be that you look at it from kind of almost like you see it like a movie screen, so you're slightly detached from it.
Mm.
Just allowing yourself to see it in that way. That's one of the tools that may be used in regression, for instance. Um, there are tools that can stop you from, or that can help you to be calm in any moment, but that won't allow you to necessarily process it. So the
Mm.
only way to actually process something is to go through it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So how it is that you look at it, it could be that you just imagine you walk through that journey with, say, that 10-year-old, and you go, right, I'm right beside you. I'm going to walk through that journey with you, but I'm not 10 this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do have to allow yourself to process it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We can process emotion. Probably the one that's the biggest emotion that all of us have to process at some point in time is grief. But that's a process that we have to go through. I mean, you know, there's tools that we can use, anger release, forgiveness tools, various things that can speed up those processes. But if
Yeah.
you're doing it on your own, it is to find a way to somehow detach from it, maybe like seeing it as a TV screen that you're looking at, or you're walking with that younger you going through that emotion, or whatever it is, but something that gives you a slightly detached view, but you still understand at an unconscious level that the event is over.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Again, a personal opinion. I would not rush grief though. So if we lose someone, even if it's a pet, a loved one, I would not straight away want to release it, because I think, as you said, it's a process we have to go through, and there are many layers to it. Of course, if down the road, long time later, we're still stuck where we begin, then that's when I would say, okay, maybe some professional help or proper release needed. But again, feeling those emotions are absolutely the key to it, because
Absolutely.
as we mentioned many times, we are taught and also afraid to feel them.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I will throw here the letter writing that I have learned. Again, it's not my stuff.
You're going to
Can't
teach me
remember.
something now. Come on.
I can't remember now. It may have been just maybe on another social media platform that I've just quickly watched a video, but it's where you write down what happened on a letter using the words that are in your mind. So not worrying about grammar or punctuations or anything like that, or if you have thoughts about that event that are swear words, feel free to write them down, because that's what you're using your own way, how you process that event, how it made you feel, and how it makes you feel now, because the two might not be the same. You may create a different emotions now, and then also later on we it either grew stronger, or maybe we have a little bit of learning in that, so maybe it lessened, but how it makes you feel now. And with that, again, as you're writing, you're allowing yourself to feel them, because you're giving a voice to those thoughts and feelings. And then once you've written everything down, you can destroy it in a safe way, and then check in with yourself, think about that thing again, and then if still there's something, do it again. And I can promise that from experience, and all the clients that reported back to me, everything, if they needed to report it and repeat it, it wasn't the same thing anymore. It lessened so much. And then the things they wrote about it, and as they did it, the learnings came, the understanding, because that again is, and taking the responsibility, as we've said in episode 2. So
and the other thing actually about that is that writing is an unconscious act. But while the words are formalized in your head, your hand is writing without you consciously thinking of every stroke. So you're involving the unconscious when you do that anyway. So I like that.
Good.
Listen to her. She knows more than me.
No, I don't. I do read more than you.
You do. That's for sure.
Right. I think we need to bring this to a close, because I'm pretty sure we
overran.
We've rambled a bit longer than, but then again, this is us. This is us.
Absolutely. But it's a topic I think we will go back and explore, even in sections or later stage.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in this, and particularly even some of the individual emotions that, we mentioned grief, but there's also anger that, a lot of people will store, and it's how to release anger, because it's not an acceptable emotion a lot of the time. People are afraid of it, so we need to figure out how to help people release anger, maybe explain it and its benefit, its negative. So there you go.
Maybe another episode.
That's probably 2 or 3.
Absolutely. So thank you so much again, everyone, for listening, following us, subscribing. Again, feel free anytime to email us, message us, comment if you have questions, if you'd like to know more, or if you just want to give us feedback, because that's how we know if we need to improve. Obviously, everything can be improved, but without your input and feedback, we don't know.
So in essence, we love to ramble, but we'd like you to give us direction on our rambles. Pretty much.
Yes. Right. So that's, I think, it for now. And thank you so much again for listening. And bye from me.
And a bye from me. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a wonderful evening.